Hey everybody, welcome back to YAFTV. It is Friday, May 5th, 2023, and I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel. I'll just jump in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence or hatred or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal or medical or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. So I'm so glad to be back with you. I always say thank you first to everybody supporting the channel. You make it happen. Thank you so much, TGIF, right? Thank God it's Friday, and thank God I'm free. And so I also want to thank you so much for making this channel happen into May as we go forward. And I want to thank my sponsors, c60evo.com/YAFTV. Discount for 10% off is the code YAFTV using that link. And people who contribute to the channel get 15% off, and that gets sent to you in a different link in a different code. But basically, C60evo ESS60 is one of the best available carbon 60s on the market. Huge for anti-inflammation, fighting the crud, fighting the spike proteins, fighting all of it in the mitochondria, getting deep in there, working with already your glutathione, your melatonin, doing the heavy lifting for them to get all that crap out of your cells, because cellular health is health. It's what makes the inflammation go away. It's what makes you be able to have better cognitive function, better immune function, all of it. So check it out. Thanks to c60evo.com/YAFTV for supporting the channel. All right, so we're gonna jump in here. Okay, so everything I'm gonna say today is interconnected. Okay, it's just all interconnected. We're on the crazy train of just, you know, we're at the end of the high satanic holidays. We're moving into, of course, the coronation tomorrow of this man, Charles, the ancestor of Vlad Dracul, out of Romania, of course, there in Transylvania, spending a lot of his time there at the castle, Mr. Charles, and his wife, Camilla. And so we're going to jump into the coronation in a moment, but I want to start with this. Of course, we have the WHO, or Tedros, that overseer of genocide, you know, in his home country. He has now announced that the pandemic of COVID is over, and that now it's not that it's not still a health emergency. It is. But he had to declare that it's over because they have a new one going to roll it out soon. And that, of course, is the operation going on with the WHO of the Assembly that's going to meet in a couple weeks, where they're going to try to pass these addendums that or these amendments that I've been talking about for months and everybody's been talking about, where they're going to try to pass quietly to take the sovereignty away from everybody who belongs to the United Nations, all of the 180 countries or whatever that belong to the United Nations will lose their sovereignty in a pandemic in the next one. So they have to have this one over, they have to declare it done so that they can bring these amendments in that literally take away the sovereignty of nations to control their own health regimens in a medical emergency, take over the actual medical systems themselves, way more besides, and we need people to still go. There's still time to at least make your voice heard. You can go to sovereigntycoalition.com and you can check out, they even have like a letter that you can just send off on email to your representative and your senator, and or you can call and say the script they give you, or you can say your own script. Okay, I'm not against scripts because I think it's them counting how many people are actually calling and sending in information. So go to sovereigntycoalition.com and do that, or call 202-224-3121 for the House, 202-225-3121 for the Senate, and blow up, just melt those phone lines and tell them how much you want the U.S. out of the WHO. How much you want to protest these amendments, because these amendments were snuck into the National Defense Act, the NDAA. Basically, they were put in through that budget where that these WHO amendments, it was snuck in there, wouldn't have to go through Congress, wouldn't have to pass legislation for them to be active. It was snuck in. So anyway, that is all happening at the same time that Rachel Walensky is resigning today from the CDC, the head. And she's the same monster who brought in the every pregnant woman or woman who is going to get pregnant who has already had a baby should get vaccinated. That you should get the shots. And this is 3 days after she was presented with a Pfizer study that showed that many infants or fetuses or pregnant women had gotten very, very sick from their trials that they were doing. You can check out Daily Clot, Daily Clot, right? Daily Clot. I mean, that's what's happening. That's funny. It's not funny because it's so awful, but you know what I'm saying. It's one of those slips, you know. But dailyclout.io, that's Naomi Wolf doing the heavy lifting, putting out that great ebook or, you know, giant book that you can, you know, slap onto your coffee table called The Pfizer Documents Analyzed, that they wanted to hide from us for 75 years. So I'm covering old territory, but the reason I'm saying this now is because Walensky resigns here as the pandemic is declared over, knowing that we have Title 42 ending for the letting in of everybody across the border. This ties into, you know, Charles. I can't call him king. It ties into the coronation. It ties into UNICEF. It ties into who he's super associated with. It ties into who is actually funding the child trafficking across the border, which is UNICEF, Red Cross, all of it, the UN. But Walensky resigning is really just, I think we should highlight the fact that she, 3 days after knowing about the Pfizer tests, were killing babies, infants in the womb, you know, babies in the womb, and also that breast milk was toxic for women who had even slept with men who had gotten the shots, that it was all out there. And so, yeah, let's hope for Nuremberg 2.0 as we go forward. Didn't expect to go so long on that, but it all ties into what I'm going to be talking about going forward here in the video. So we get the coronation tomorrow, this giant mass worldwide ritual, right? This fake Christian ritual, which isn't Christian anymore at all whatsoever. Now they're having heads of every religion attend, Islam, Hinduism, rabbis, basically everybody you can think of under the sun who can claim a religion is going to be there with importance at this coronation tomorrow of Charles. And so I wanted to get into that, but first I want to just mention something that's also happening at the same time as this horrible time of year, which is the 40 days from the middle of March to the end of April, you know, where we get all this Satanism thrown in our face. Well, you know, it wasn't enough to have SatanCon last week, you know, in Massachusetts. Now we get in the EU Parliament, and don't worry, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commissioner, she'll be at the coronation tomorrow, right? The former, well, whatever, I've talked about her a million times. But anyway, so the EU Parliament is now having a exhibition in there, right there in the EU Parliament, of basically a Jesus blasphemy exhibition of Jesus portrayed with his disciples as drag queens, his disciples as gay men drag queens. He's a drag queen. And The Last Supper, this is by Elizabeth Olsen, a lesbian Swedish photographer, putting up this art at the EU Parliament right at this weekend. Okay, right over the weekend of the High Satanic Holidays, and does she know about that? I don't know, but it looks like it, because when you look at the art, I'll link it below. You get Jesus with his who are supposed to be his disciples, wearing they're hanging off of him, wearing SM leathers, okay, SM leathers, BDSM gear, hanging off of Jesus. And then we have The Last Supper, where it's Jesus as a drag queen with disciples as drag queens. And then there's another one of Jesus basically like spooning or like laying over another crucified black man who I think is also supposed to be Jesus. And so what Olsen says about this is that, we just needed to have, we have millions of paintings of Jesus communing with heterosexual men. We need to have paintings and exhibits of Jesus representing homosexuals. And so they decided to have some BDSM, hardcore SM representatives of the gay community be in these depictions. And it's just so ridiculous, and it's awful. And so I wanted to let you know that that's going on at the same time, okay, as this coronation tomorrow. So they're in the center of Europe, and all the, you get your heads there that are going to be there at the coronation. And okay, there's a lot of things going on that are strange, but not strange considering the Antichrist situation. In fact, people even thought that Charles could have been the Antichrist. There's a guy named Tim Cohen wrote the book called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. You can buy it on any of you place you buy books, where he goes through like verbatim, like every single thing you could point to that has to do with Charles being the Antichrist. Some people think it's William, but that's all put out there for entertainment purposes only. But it's very interesting when we look at Charles, claiming to have the bloodline of Christ, the Merovingian bloodline, claiming to have bloodlines with David and Abraham, also claiming, the House of Saud bloodlines. Like, they're just all in one oil. Those fake royals that just climbed in there and took over have nothing. They have no connection to anything. They're just total frauds. But this coronation, it also coincides, I believe, with the Kentucky Derby tomorrow. I kind of call it like the bad hat. We have the white hats, we have the black hats, and then we just have the bad hats that are going to hit the world tomorrow in the Kentucky Derby, and then also at the coronation. But really weird things are happening there, folks, and one of them is that they're trying to pass and squeak through this tricky little thing where they're calling it an homage of the people, where the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Anglican head, well, Charles will then be the head, but Justin Welby, who has been Charles's mentor, and Justin Welby is also covered for many pedophiles in his, claim up the Anglican ladder, and he also visits Charles, and Charles has this weird temple on his private estates where they go and commune. I've talked about it in other videos, very strange stuff. But basically, they're going to do this thing called the homage to the people, or of the people, not to, definitely not to, nothing to the people. It's of the people, right? Because remember, Charles's dad, Prince William, what he said is, after I die, I want to come back as a virus. I want to be a plague on humanity. That's literally Prince William, the Queen's husband there, Queen Elizabeth. And so we get Charles coming in. He's a wicked introvert. He loves to spend all of his time at his ancestor Vlad Dracul, who they made. All the depictions of Dracula came out of this knowing about Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Impaler, they called him, because he would just slaughter everybody and drink their blood. He was a big blood drinker. And so, but his castle is a place that Charles loves so much. And so what they're going to do is have Justice Welby, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, is going to perform a never been not done before thing where the oath, after they do it for the coronation, okay, where usually it's usually the nobility, right? And then you get your lords, you get your sirs and your dames, right? But basically it's the nobility and the royalty that are supposed to, from the dominions, claim their allegiance forever and ever to the king and his descendants and bloody. Well, they're sneaking this in where they're going to call it an homage of the people, where if you want to, just you regular subhuman, you can also proclaim your allegiance to the people. And I won't even say the oath on air here because I don't want to do any consent type anything energetically, but it's very scary. It's being done for the first time. And so who's going to be there? Well, remember Charles, like recently he was called out for giving hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, right? In cash to Saudi princes and various other Arab princes. A lot going down there with pay-for-play behind the scenes. We don't really even know what it was about yet. It hasn't even come out. I've been looking into it, but tons and tons of money in cash. So they got invited. So we get your sheikhs from the UAE, we get them from Saudi Arabia, we get them from Qatar. They're all coming to the coronation, right? And we get, they're all going to be there at the Abbey Church in Westminster. And there's going to be Macron, Trudeau, Duda from Poland. That's interesting. Jill Biden, of course, you know, she's going to be hanging out with Ariana de Rothschild, her bestie. Han Zhang, the VP, right, from China, he'll be there. And as I said, Ursula von der Leyen, so many others. We get all the royalty of everywhere in Europe. We get the royalty out of Africa, royalty out of, where else? I don't know. Apparently there's just royalty everywhere. Who knew? Who knew that there's just royalty everywhere, okay? Thinking that they're special, but they want to protect democracy. They do. They love democracy. And so what's going to happen then is that then they're going to have a big old giant concert the next day, okay? You know, you got to have your big giant concert. You got to bring your celebs. And so they're going to have Katy Perry. You know, you'll have your Lionel Richie doing a little bit of, you know, smooth music there. But then you're going to have Katy Perry and a bunch of others. But Katy Perry's the biggie, right? Because we all know Katy Perry, for entertainment purposes only, with her massive amounts of satanic propaganda, satanic photo shoots, videos, all of it, Katy Perry. Well, she became the ambassador. She's an ambassador of UNICEF since like 2015 or something, a long time now. UNICEF, right? So UNICEF is the United Nations arm that claims to support children of the world, right? And so she's been doing that for a while, and then she just happened to meet Charles when she was, you know, hanging out, I think it was in Paris during a Vogue shoot that, or maybe it was Italy, Milan. But anyway, just so happens Charles happened to be there too. They met, you know, they became, you know, love friends. And then basically what happened is he invited her to become the ambassador of the British Asian Trust. Okay, the British Asian Trust. What is that, you say? I mean, who knew? Never heard of it. Well, the British Asian Trust is apparently just a creation between Charles and his cricket buddies, basically where they created a trust. It's just a giant fund. It's, you know, one of their usual funds, where they claim to combat child slave labor and trafficking. Okay, this is the Children's Protection Fund, okay, out of the British Asian Trust. All right, and so it basically started, so Charles started this trust in 2007. It was him and a bunch of Southeast Asian businessmen created this thing called the British Asian Trust. And this is a bigger trust. But within it, they have the Children's Protection Fund. Okay, and this is what Katy Perry is apparently so excited about. She just does so much good work. And this is chaired by an Indian woman named, a billionaire named Natasha Poonawalla. Okay, so these people are all hanging out in the big, you know, high society circuits. And Natasha Poonawalla is married to Adar Poonawalla. And Adar Poonawalla is the CEO of Serum Institute, okay, which is basically the largest vaccine output corporation in the world. So the Serum Institute of India, they put out more vaccines per unit than any other company. So they're even bigger than your Pfizers and your Modernas and all of that. They basically supply the vaccine materials, okay, to all of everybody else. So is it starting to make sense here when I just said, like, oh, they said the pandemic's over. Oh, you know, we're going to have the UN Assembly, the WHO Assembly. We're going to talk about these amendments. We're going to, you know, claim sovereignty, right? And then we get the King Charles coronation, where basically they're basically saying to all our dominions, you know, and all you people in those dominions, just passively consent to total subjugation under this fake king. And so Katy Perry, working for UNICEF, working for the Children's Protection Fund under the British Asian Trust, which she is an ambassador of, going to entertain everybody on Sunday there. And so it's very interesting because with this Serum Institute of India, who actually is the big money behind this whole organization, okay, is a massive funder of UNICEF and the World Health Organization, world's largest vaccine maker. And of course, UNICEF is funding massively this slave trade, as I mentioned earlier, on our southern border, as well as the Red Cross and the UN running all of it as they're coming up through the Darien Gap with Title 42 ending, which has been kind of just a placeholder. You know, it's not necessarily really real, but they have been using it. Now it's going to end on May 9th or the 11th. And it's going to be full bore, for girls' health, that they're going to be pushing forward mass migration on every level across the world. And what we will see happen, and for entertainment purposes only, in my guesstimated, prediction, is that it will be this migration that will bring in this catastrophic contagion that Bill Gates and his, John Hopkins and all of the guys that always do these dry run scenarios. The last one was catastrophic contagion last October, where they talked about a massive enterovirus, okay, that was going to come and hit us and hit the kids. Enteroviruses, hit the kids hard, respiratory and gut, devastation on the gut, basic tear through the immune system, very, very hard on kids, because they love the kids, because they're UNICEF, and because Katy Perry loves them with the Children's Protection Fund, and that's the coronation going to happen tomorrow. And so there's that. It's like, I see it as a giant ritual for the bringing in of Prince William's desires, and we'll cover it, minimally, but it's all interconnected with everything else going on. And so as we move on from there, I want to talk about some of these things that are going on. And one of them is that we get this interesting news, which is more of the Epstein stuff, because we've got, as the banks continue to fail, with First Republic, of course, being bought out by Jamie Dimon, being bought out by JP Morgan Chase. We all call it JP Morgan all the time, but it's Chase Bank. That basically, they're getting $50 billion more for First Republic, right? And the FDIC is, basically losing all of its funds at this point as far as securing these failing banks. And it's our taxpayer dollars. And what's really interesting for people to understand is that these 3 bank bailouts that have happened in the last month have been larger in what has been bailed out, what has been given, okay, to these banks, to the billionaire banksters involved in the accounts, to everybody. It has been more money than what went into the 2008 big fail. Okay, too big to fail, the Big Short, but the too big to fail. We've already surpassed that amount in the hundreds of billions that's gone to these people, to these banks. And, JP Morgan was also who ended up buying out WAMU, Washington Mutual, who was at the center of the Big Short in 2008. Now First Republic, and now, of course, we got 3 more banks that are going down. Western Alliance is said to hit the crapper. Basically, they've stopped all their trading. They have $71 billion in assets. Massive stock collapse. We get Metropolitan Bank down by 30% in stocks, and then we get PacWest going down very quickly. Their shares dropping immensely. It looks like they're about to just be the same as Western Alliance, First Republic. Those 3 banks look to be the next ones on the fail of the regional banks. These regional banks, they call them regional. You think, oh, they're not the biggest banks, whatever, it's okay. No, they are the boutique banks of the banksters, okay, the venture capitalists, where they say we're bringing in all of these entrepreneurs with these startups, and then they fail within a year. Okay, but all the money keeps changing hands. So, as we look at the entire U.S. banking system, facing insolvency, and we look at also the lowest commercial bank deposits happening in this quarter, the lowest commercial bank deposits, okay, since 1934. The lowest, okay, proportionally, the lowest commercial bank deposits since 1934. Okay, so 1934 is like the end of the worst of what's going on in the Depression. All right, so we're at that level now, and that's what brought in FDR and the whole convinced the population to go full bore, full war, full communist. Okay, or whatever you want to call it, this little brand of socialism that went on with FDR. And so that's all very interesting. And so I want to just mention from there a couple things, which is, when we get into this banking with JP Morgan and how Jamie Dimon, keeps buying up everything and doing the ESG program and just tanking our country. Some interesting information came out recently regarding a former JP Morgan, he was former head of Barclays Bank, and then he went into the private banking, he was a private banking chief executive at JP Morgan, and this was to do with Epstein. And because everything keeps pointing back to this Cartel Epstein bribery scheme connected with Israel, connected with Mossad, connected with scientists, connected with what's going on now, connected with Gates, connected with everybody going to Epstein Island, and they're all interconnected. And this whole thing that we're getting into of what Jeffrey Hinton, who the grandfather of AI, or whatever they call him, the godfather of AI, resigning from Google and saying, I'm getting out, it's getting scary. The biotech is going to take over the DNA. The AI is going to be out of control. These are the people that orchestrated that. We had Gates hanging out with Epstein. We have everybody hanging out with Epstein. But this one guy, Jess Staley, former head of Barclays Bank, private banking chief executive at JP Morgan, being called out for what was a violent rape, with basically saying that Epstein had organized and orchestrated the ability for these executives to come and perform, rapes. Of course, we know about all that. But this is interesting information, okay, because it's linking right up there with Chase Bank and JP Morgan, and how they were using the executives, okay, to come in, have access to violently rape girls, and that the promise was, you cover up our money laundering that we're doing through JP Morgan Chase for entertainment purposes only, and then you get to do more of it. You get to come back and do more of it. And also, we'll bring you billionaire clients who are also trapped in our bribery scheme. And so Jess Staley, these were emails that came out recently, that basically Epstein had a deal with Staley to protect his sex trafficking and bribery operation through JP Morgan Chase. And in exchange, he'd bring these billionaire clients. So their email, this is email from Jess Staley, the former executive chief of private banking. He shot Epstein an email saying, that was fun, say hi to Snow White. Okay? And so Epstein says back, what character would you like next? And he says, how about Beauty and the Beast? Okay? And so this whole situation of pedophilia using the Disney princess theme, but it's also an MK Ultra theme of using the Disney princesses or the fairy tale princesses, and the sick, psycho, crazy yuck of these men going to rape girls and being provided for them by Epstein's trafficking rings out of Eastern Europe, out of East Palm, out of anywhere, out of the various boroughs of New York. All the places where these girls were stolen from or paid off to come and be part of this awful pedo ring. And this was on the island. And so this is, Little St. James, pedo island there. And this is literally the senior executive private banking at JP Morgan, Jess Staley, saying that he said, say hi to Snow White, and next time I'd like Beauty and the Beast. And this woman has come and is putting charges against JP Morgan Chase and also Jess Staley, saying these were violent rapes that I went through. And so let's pray for her and pray for justice that dirtbag ends up behind bars for entertainment purposes only. And so, yeah, and what about you, Diamond? What about it? What about JP Morgan and the whole Epstein just bribery scheme that has brought our country to its knees through all the immense amount of people that it incorporates? So you get people like Justin Nelson, JP Morgan banker from 2014 to 17, communicating with Epstein. You get Mary Erdos, who became CEO of JP Morgan's wealth management unit. Mary Erdos, consistent contact with Epstein. John Duffy, JP Morgan's U.S. private bank, John Duffy. Okay, and so JP Morgan had 55 Epstein-related accounts, okay, worth nearly $1 billion. All right, and so this is all just very important to understand as we look at this, and then we look at people like Reid Hoffman. Okay, it's come out now recently as well. Let me have a quick sip of water. Reid Hoffman, of course, the LinkedIn co-founder. This is for entertainment purposes only. He's a co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, and he's been funding, very interestingly, E. Jean Carroll's defamation suit against Trump, what they're calling the rape, trial, which isn't a rape trial, it's a defamation suit, but it's being funded by this guy Reid Hoffman, who is co-founder of LinkedIn. And Reid Hoffman also was on the Epstein Island, okay? Reid Hoffman, who's funding E. Jean Carroll's suit against Trump to do with this Bergdorf-Goodman incident, she's claiming. And he's a billionaire. He's funding her lawsuit. And this is where it gets interesting. He's part of the Giving Pledge, okay, Reid Hoffman. So he's part of the Gates Giving Pledge, the Gates, Buffett, all of them, the Giving Pledge, where you pledge to give away tons of your money. Most of you give it away. Basically, the Giving Pledge is a way to launder money through a tax-exempt foundation, okay? It's just a way to say you're giving your money, whereas you don't have to pay taxes on it, and then you fund all of this, all of the World Economic Forum policies, all of the vaccination, UN stuff. You just fund it all. You fund the Cartel Babylon New World Order prison planet scenario without having to pay taxes. Look at the Shermans. I always mention them. The Shermans who had the off-label cheap drugs factories up in Canada. They did the Giving Pledge, and then within a short while later, they were like ritually murdered in their homes. They were producing hydroxychloroquine and the Sermons. They were producing everything really, really cheaply and en masse right before the whole pandemics came about, and then they were dead and ritually displayed in their homes. They did the Giving Pledge, just like the Zuckerbergs, the rest of them. Okay, all the people in this biotech, transhumanist, totally psychotic cabal, Cartel Babylon, Cartel Pandora. And so Reid Hoffman, he goes ahead and funds this case. And it's really interesting because they were like, well, no, there's something funding that's called American Future Republic. American Future Republic. And it turns out that this is just basically Reid Hoffman funding this thing that he named American Future Republic. And then he also has something called Patriotic Republic, both of these out of Chicago, Illinois. And he has his wife, Michelle Yee, or I think they might be divorced now, Michelle Yee, also in the Giving Pledge. And yeah, with these nonprofits, they use them as giving platforms. And they have something called the Aphorism Foundation. And this is very interesting. They have something called the Aphorism Foundation. Aphorism. It's basically like a general truth, like an adage, a general truth that you would say in a few words. Okay, but it's an interesting name for a foundation, which has about $1.5 billion in assets. This Aphorism Foundation, this is Reid Hoffman funding E. Jean Carroll with her suit against President Trump out of this trial going on, just ending up now in New York, to do with what does she claim? She claims was a rape that happened back in the 90s, and that the strange thing here is that her exact there's a lot of weird stuff. Actually, I'm not going to get into it. Maybe I will. I don't know. But let's get back to where I was saying aphorism. So, okay, this guy, Reid Hoffman, he's given $28 million to Democrat candidates. $28 million, okay? And this is out of the Aphorism Foundation, or it might be the American Future Republic Foundation. Okay, American Future, that's funding E. Jean Carroll, also is funding the Democrats to the tune of $28 million. But then out of the Aphorism Foundation with $1.5 billion in assets, we have $25 million going to the Obama Foundation, So the Obama Foundation, they largely say it has to do with his presidential library there outside Illinois. And Reid Hoffman is now known as a founding member of the Obama Library, having given $25 million to the Obama Foundation. And just one strange thing about the E. Jean Carroll scenario that's gotten out there is the oddity of how her exact description of what happened with Trump was a full episode of SVU, Special Victims Unit, Law and Order, where the exact same thing happens in a Bergdorf Goodman's New York City dressing area. Okay, very strange. And then the interview of her where she's describing how people think of rape as fantasies. And in the episode of SVU, Special Victims Unit, Law and Order episode, that person in the episode actually talked about rape as fantasies. So it's just a bizarre situation, and I'm saying that because what I'm saying is that, these attacks are going to keep coming. And now, of course, with the Proud Boys being the trial that just went to conviction yesterday, the awfulness of what's going on there, I'm going to jump to now, because it is really scary lawfare, where we're going to have this being used, of course, to go against President Trump. But the worst thing is we have 14 now people who are now being, who have been convicted of seditious conspiracy regarding J6. And this is completely crazy, what is going on with these lawfare trials. And so I recommend you look at AmericaRenewing.com. That's Julia Kelly doing great work there, just putting everything out about what's going on with these trials. But we have Joe Biggs yesterday, Zach Rahul, Enrique Tarrio, Ethan Nordine, getting convicted of seditious conspiracy. And it is very, very screwed up, total freaky precedent, because it was just complete lawfare. They weren't allowed to present any of the real evidence. And so you get all the stuff about massive amounts of CIs. We have at least 8, confidential informants for the FBI working for entertainment purposes only, to implant themselves into the Proud Boys and insert stuff into their chat rooms, okay, Parler, Telegram, insert information, incite things, try to elicit, aggravate scenarios of wanting to protest, whereas there really wasn't any real evidence to come out. And even Vice News put out a an article today that I'll talk about in a second. But what we get here is we get this for entertainment purposes only, FBI planted evidence in the chat rooms, okay, planted messages, but then in the trial to the jury, they're not allowed to say that these are informants that put these messages in. And then tons of the messages are either redacted or absolutely disappeared. And we get the jury being in DC, of course, where it's 75% Biden voters. I think it's even higher than that, like 90%. And then you get the situation where the lawyers for the Proud Boys were only allowed to use 12 preemptive motions for jury selection. So they could only dismiss 12 of the jury possibilities in a crowd of like the zombie apocalypse of Democrat jurors presenting themselves. And so they only had 12, they could only dismiss 12 people. I think they got 2 more that they could dismiss. And this is for 5 defendants. So totally rigged there. And then they also brought something on board in precedent here with something that's called tools theory. And tools theory is basically saying that you can have a conspiracy, okay, where you have somebody who's in charge of the conspiracy is using another person without their knowledge to pass along information to then have others get involved in a conspiracy. So there's no direct correlation, but it's something called tools for the conspiracy. And they're bringing this out in precedent in this. And this is a big deal because tools has never been used like as a real, a real precedent. And also seditious conspiracy hasn't been used in 100 years. I mean, this is not a real thing. They're just pulling this out of the hat. And so we get, massive trials of mobsters and gangsters where they had to fight so hard to prove conspiracy. I mean, down to the nth. And it was so hard to even get these trials, to pass, where you got convictions from major mobsters. I mean, we're not even talking about Nancy Pelosi's dad, like D'Alessandro. We're not talking about him. No. I mean, for entertainment purposes only. Nothing to do with those guys. Nothing to do with the Rodhams or, any of those folks. We're talking about mobsters like John Gotti, like even, Bob Mueller's friend, Whitey Bulger. We're not even talking about them. Like, you can't even get them on conspiracy, but you can get these 4 beer drinking, potato heads that are great patriots, but certainly not planning any insurrection, convicted on seditious conspiracy. It is ridiculous to the nth degree. And so I wanted to bring people to the knowledge of an organization that we need to know about and really start to educate ourselves about, which is Fully Informed Jury Association, the Fully Informed Jury Association, Fully Informed Jury Association, where we can learn, okay, to understand what jury nullification is. People need to understand that being on the jury, you have the right to question the law, you have the right to question the proceedings, to question what's going on. People on juries just get bullied and led by the prosecutors. And you need to understand that going to Fully Informed Jury Association, I'll link it below, you can get the tools, understand what it means, how important it is to not be bullied by lawfare agents, what it means to nullify a jury, and therefore, to end the case, that it's jury nullification. This case is bogus, and we're going to have a hung jury. It's not going to happen. And so I want to put that out there. It's very important. We have Vice.com even coming out, which is so interesting because George Soros and Fortress is about to acquire Vice News out of bankruptcy. So that's pretty interesting. And so they put out this article. I think they don't even know that it was, even a little bit positive, it was called Vice. At Vice.com, Inside the Proud Boys Jury, and basically, they were quoting a guy named Andre Mundell, 63, who was part of the jury, and basically, just rounding it up, and I'll link it below so you can read it. He said, it was the chats on Telegram, Parler, and private texts that by day 2, we basically believed that they were guilty by day 2. Okay. And so many of the texts were deleted. He said that kind of like insinuated or proved guilt. Like if they had deleted so much, that must mean they're guilty. Okay. And so this is the opposite of evidence-based jurisprudence. This is the opposite of innocent until proven guilty. Okay. Vice.com, Inside the Proud Boys Jury. You can look it up. And interestingly, this same man also said the evidence doesn't show Trump wasn't involved at all. Except for calling people to the Capitol, whatever. And so that's all very interesting. And so, yeah, this is a very sad day. We really pray, for Joe Biggs and the rest of them. It's awful. It's a travesty. And when we look at people being able to get out there to, protest like they might this weekend, for that guy who was choked out in New York City, as sad as that is, with his mental illness and his massive 40 arrests and his, just total assaults that he's been doing on the subway, Jordan Neely. I'll get into that real briefly. But, it's very, very sad to see these men that did nothing, nothing compared to what's even been going on with the trans protests in our state's legislatures in the last couple of weeks. It's not more than that, okay, what these guys did outside of the Capitol. And so we pray for them, and we also, we need to take action. Fully Informed Jury Association. And then also, we want to, get involved in our precincts. We need to get legislators who are going to do more, because they're not doing anything. I don't see anybody, doing much, in our GOP representatives in the House for these people that are being wrongfully being made into political prisoners. So I'll just mention this with a couple, as we move along here, almost done here at 47 minutes. CNN is going to be hosting a presidential town hall for President Trump, okay, on Wednesday, May 10th. So next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, they're going to be in where? Oh, New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Trump just can't stay out of New Hampshire. There's got to be some big news. I mean, I know that that's where you go in the beginning of a presidential campaign, but not seeing anybody else there. We got Trump hanging out in New Hampshire. So he's going to be back there again next Wednesday. I've been talking about it on this channel. All of the Pandora Cartel situation there in New Hampshire. What do they know? What's going on? What's Mike Gill doing these days, this week? What's happening? So yeah, New Hampshire primary GOP voters town hall with CNN. Isn't that interesting? Because we're finding out that pretty much, BlackRock has pretty much bought out Fox News, right? And this whole Tucker thing seems to be connected with this. And it seems to also be connected with Dominion. BlackRock owns Fox now. Well, they own the UBS group. They own a lot of the shares of Fox. Okay, Rupert Murdoch got a loan like last fall or something for the Murdoch News Group or whatever it's called, for entertainment purposes only, of something like $1.25 billion, okay? And multiple banks involved, but 100 million of that came from the Bank of China, okay? The Bank of China, Joe Biden knows it well, okay? So you get that situation, and then BlackRock owns, now the majority of Fox. And then BlackRock also owns UBS Group. Okay, well, the majority shares of UBS Group, 200 million shares. And UBS Group owns Staple Street. Okay, Staple Street, started by Kevin Owens. And then we get Staple Street owning Dominion voting machines, Dominion Incorporated. Okay, I'm sure that, Lord Malloch Brown will be at the coronation tomorrow. But then we get into, what does that mean? So BlackRock Group, okay, who makes up BlackRock Group? BlackRock Group is made up by BlackRock, okay, owned by Vanguard, and BlackRock China. Okay, that's who makes up BlackRock Group. And then you have UBS Group, okay, just think of, what happened there with the buyout in the banks there in Switzerland. So UBS, who makes up UBS Group? That's UBS Swiss and UBS China. UBS China. So we're getting this massive CCP control. It's growing and it's kind of merging and melding. It's becoming like a giant fascist machine with the WEFers, with the Cartel Babylon, with the World Economic Forum psychopaths. And so very interestingly, we saw Dominion, we see that Connack is still like, everything's still bubbling up around Connack and all of the software, the software servers in China, the election software servers in China, the embezzlement of millions of dollars, all of that. Well, Dominion has moved their address from Denver, Colorado, to Georgia. And interestingly, it's only a lock drop box. It's only a lock box, like a drop box, with PNC Bank, okay, in Georgia at a like an industrial park there. PNC Bank Treasury Management, okay, the 7th largest commercial bank in the USA. Apparently, they're not part of the ones that are only having the lowest commercial deposits since 1934, because they have Dominion. But 1669 Phoenix Parkway, Atlanta, Georgia. And so the PNC Financial Services Group is where Dominion has moved their address pretty much right to this bank. Of course, they are registered as a foreign corporation, and all of their programmers for Dominion, the programmers are all in Serbia. Okay, when we see like Pelosi running over to Serbia, and that we have that mass shooter the other day, and a teenager goes into an elementary school and kills like 9 people, and now the president's saying we're going to disarm Serbia. We will disarm all of Serbia, right? Yeah, so there's that. But speaking of things that are in Denver or used to be, like Dominion and everything that's awful about Colorado, well, we also have something called Parascript. Parascript out of Longmont, California, a lot going around there. This is ballot sorting software, and what's really interesting here is this comes out of Moscow. Parascript originally. And it's run by Russian nationals like since 1996, and they literally have the same people running it for all these years, and it provides the lists of all ballots not returned. It separates the ballots by it's literally in charge of like absentee ballots coming in, going out. It's a signature verification software. It basically is usually kept in a separate room than what would be observed by poll watchers. This is where you run the ballots. It's not the tabulators with the votes. This is about the ballots to actually determine if they're valid ballots, and it's actually used massively in the United States, called Parascript. We'll get more into it in the future. I'm just finding out about it now, but it literally used to exist in Moscow. Now it mostly exists in Longmont, Colorado, and mostly run by Russian nationals. And so we're going to get more into that. I did mention Jordan Neely, the man who was choked out by the Marine for trying to assault people on the subway. He'd been arrested 40 times, obviously mentally ill. They say schizophrenic. We know that things like all the drugs and the synthetic marijuana coming mostly out of Israel is just making people nuts. And of course, you put any kind of stress on top of that, and it's even worse. But this guy had been arrested 40 times. There were literal postings all throughout social media, and actually even like real postings put out there in the subway warning people, if you see the Michael Jackson imitation guy, watch out, like he's dangerous. And so he went and tried to assault people, and then this Marine stepped in, tried to put him unconscious, ended up killing him, and he'll be charged with manslaughter. And, you know, it's just the total situation of our country where this is your choice. You know, do I protect the people on the subway that are about to get assaulted because I have the skills to do so? Take the risk. You know, when people are on drugs and they're like acting psycho, it's not easy to subdue them, and it's hard to know what to do. You know, no excuse for you know, for the death of this person, but folks, you know, we're living in a total organized demolition, okay, of our city spaces for sure. You know, and there's no easy answer, but the easiest answer is shut down Big Pharma, okay? Take the power out of their hands, take the power out of the cartels, shut down the borders, have a Congress that actually does what the people ask it to do. All the law and order of what we had just not that long ago, where things used to actually be fairly safe in this country. And so I might leave it there. I know I always wanted to say more. It always is like that, but I might leave it. Yeah, you know, as we look at, you know, coming up on May 9th, we've got the Victory Day, the whole thing with, you know, the drone strike on the Kremlin and all the propaganda around that. Word on the street, oh, Victory Day, you know, the 9th could be the day where they use a retaliatory day to go after Zelensky. I think this is all organized and created to become an escalation of war. You know, whatever happened there with the Kremlin is obviously, you know, an intentional FE to the world, because the way it went down was very, you know, supposedly they shot down the drones with you know, satellite weapons, and it seemed a little too neat, a little too finely orchestrated for it to be something that isn't an FE. And so what are they planning? Are they going to escalate? You know, that's what our prayers are for. And so we just pray. We just pray because we know that the entirety of humanity does not want war. What we want is peace. We had National Prayer Day yesterday, you know, strangely, you know, created by Truman, right? Mr. Warmonger himself. But, you know, as we look at prayer and we really, really commit to it, recommit to it, our heart resonance is so much larger than what their shots can do to us, as hard as they try, right? Our prayers continue to resonate with each other, and we continue to pray against these evil cartel members from executing their plans. And we connect with each other. We connect, you know, in loving ways, in all the ways we can. But we really, really, really need to pray for humanity in the world right now. So I'll just leave it there, folks, with the prayer wave, okay? We are free. TGIF, prayer wave ongoing all week. And, you know, let's just give it our all. Let's just give it our all this weekend. Love, love, love to our families, to our communities, and also get out there. If you have town council meetings this weekend that you should attend, then go ahead and attend them. You know, all the things that you can do, give it your extra little bit, because we need it right now more than ever. So thanks so much for watching, folks. Thanks for supporting the channel. There's ways to do so below. You are free. I'll see you next time.